Hello everyone, welcome to Adadarana Viz 24. My name is Ashinsani Veerasinghe, and in today's program we're going to talk about something different and important, which is about climate change. And to talk about this, we have guests from British Council to talk about their Active Citizens program. So to talk about the Active Citizens program and much more, let me now introduce you to the guests. First of all, a very warm welcome to Mohammed Husni. In introducing him, he is a co-founder and director of Program Strategy of Impact Voices, which is an independent social innovation intermediary based in Colombo. And also, a warm welcome to Joanne Kothalaval as well. She is a British Council Active Citizens Master Facilitator. And to tell you, both of them are British Council International Climate Champions. So, a warm welcome to the Climate Champions.
Thank you so much.
So, to get started with today's program, I would like to direct the first question to Joanne. Let's talk about what is Active Citizens Program and what is it all about?
Well, the Active Citizens Program is, you can classify it overall as a youth empowerment program, and it tackles this issue of youth empowerment through various modules, which we call them. So we focus on identity, on building your dialogue, interacting with the greater community, and then finally empowering them to act on a social action project. So basically the overall objective of the program is to empower young people to identify community issues, community challenges, and to find grassroots level solutions to them. So they are a part of the process, the stakeholders are also a part of the process. So it's youth empowerment for a positive change, if I could put it that way.
Right. So in this program, which is based on youth empowerment for positive change, now this year's focus is different, which is on climate change. So now let's talk about, Hosni, let's talk about it. What is social action for climate change and what is this theme all about for this year?
Sure. So British Council's history in engaging with young people, especially with the topic of climate change, goes back to, I think, at least 12 years with my personal experience, because both of us, we got selected as International Climate Champions back in 2010. It's almost 11 years ago, and it was the second batch they had back then. So for last 10 years, they have been working with young people in promoting and supporting young people in addressing issues related to climate change. As Joanne correctly mentioned, we have been also having Active Citizens program for last 10 years. That is a social leadership program for young people. But interestingly, this year, British Council has a special focus on climate change for their Active Citizens program as well. So in line with that, they have the program called Social Action for Climate Change, where they have been training more than 500 young people all over the country through different partners across different districts to make them as change agents who will not only talk about the climate change on social media and other platforms, but also really get into the grassroots and work into those issues as well. And interestingly, British Council is also have a special interest for this year as well as in the follow-up for upcoming years in terms of the climate change, because United Kingdom is hosting the next COP26, that is the COP Conference of Parties. That is the world's one of the biggest climate change conference, where all the member states come together and discuss about how they can come together and discuss how they can find solutions together as a global community. So UK will be hosting that in November. So leading up to that, as well as part of their the decade of engagement on climate change, they have been sort of designing this program.
So in this process of empowering the youth and getting all of them engaged in this particular program, how do you feel educating youth on these climate changes and climate issues is important, and how will it set the ground to the way forward of this?
Well, young people are going to be sort of the who would take over the community in the future, right? And educating them on climate change, it's not just about knowing what is climate change. It's also knowing what is climate change in your current community context. How is it relating to your daily life? How is it relating to your daily activities? So something that we try to work with young people is also to tell them, think of it in terms of your day-to-day activities. Think of it in terms of your food chain, and understand really, how does this connect to me? Because right now there's a lot of knowledge on it, but there's very little understanding as to how it connects to our day-to-day lives.
So going along in making people understand about how to make this part of their life and face the changing issues to everything, what are the activities that are involved, and in your social action for climate change program, how is it moduled up, and what are the activities that are set up in the program?
Sure. So as we correctly said, as we mentioned before, it's a same active citizens program that we have been running for 10 years, but then it's usually a 5 days residential training, but now this time with the COVID situation, we run this as a online training or sometimes hybrid with following all the health regulations. What we have done here, basically we have the overall active citizens module, but as part of the content development team, which Joe was also part of that team, where we have integrated climate change element to our overall active citizens program, right? So, but what we also realized was, now when we go to communities and when you talk to them about the climate change, you can't just go with the definitions and say, okay, this is what the climate change and you should all work together, right? So we have strategically planned those 6 days so that, you know, they will not get into definitions and get stuck in those definitions, but we try to have those conversations with them in a way they understand what climate change is and how that affects them in their communities. And then towards the day 3 and 4, we slowly take them to how those different effects to the economic factors, political factors, as well as, you know, social factors, how it's interconnected, and then we also connect them with the global community. So it's not just a local issue, but it's also a global issue. So how we can sort of collectively find solutions and also learn from each other, right? So that is a sort of a journey that we take them through the first 4 days, and on the last 2 days we are also taking them a step ahead. We talk about the national commitment. So this is something, a very important topic that we were so passionate about, because everyone talk about the climate change, and we ask the governments, to all the decision makers, to fix certain things for us. But also we should understand there are certain global commitments that we all have, and Sri Lanka has committed for them. One of the agreements, the Paris agreements, which was signed in 2015, but no one knows about it except for few people, right? So we are also bringing these messages to communities. It's not only for Colombo, Kandy, another urban community, but we are, when we say grassroots, we go to Trinco, Nuwara, Galle, and all those selected districts will be engaging those young people and telling them more about these commitments. And then make them also empowered to hold our decision makers accountable, because when people don't know about those commitments that Sri Lanka has signed for or they're supposed to follow, people won't be able to hold them accountable, right? So that is also one interesting element about this entire training. In addition to that, we have also taken one step ahead about the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, everyone talks about SDGs and they say like we should achieve them by 2030, but no one really tells like what are those targets, how we should really achieve it, right? If you say quality education, it's just 2 words, but how can we really achieve quality education? So interestingly, in this training, we are also taking them through that journey. We help them to design their programs aligning with SDG targets. I mean, we have spoken about the goals for last 5 years, SDGs, but here we talk about the SDG targets and how they can really design their programs in local communities. So that is sort of, you know, program element that we have put together. So once they complete those 6 days training, they have been supported to do projects in their own communities for 2-3 months, and then we also follow up on those activities as well. And overall, they become a network of Sri Lankan community of active citizens, and also they are connected to the global community as well.
That sounds really interesting. To know more details about this program, we will be back after a short break. Welcome back after the break. We were in an interesting conversation about climate change with the guests who are here from the British Council. So Husni, getting back into the program of Active Citizen program, let's get into more detail about, now you explained the content and the module of the course. What can one become after completing this course? And because climate change is a rare topic people talk about, what is the different in this?
Great. So one of the main objective of this training is not to make climate experts all over the country because it's pretty difficult task to do over the 6 days. But we are looking at how we can engage communities from diverse backgrounds. I mean, we run these trainings in state universities, in other communities with the private sector engagement. So how we can engage young professionals, undergraduates, grassroots community activists, to all those people to have a basic understanding on the climate change and relate it to their day-to-day lives, and also how they can take action in their own way. So this is something that unique about this training, because we are not expecting everyone to become a climate expert or an activist overnight, or someone who will sort of say I'm a climate activist because I went through the training. But it's more about how we can bring that conscious citizenship in the communities, because interesting fact I would like to bring out here is people talk about the system change, right? People want to see the changes, including addressing climate change issues overnight, but it is not possible. One person cannot do the system change, neither we can't expect that overnight, right? For that we need to create these communities of active citizens who are conscious about it, who are informed about these topics, and who can really relate it to their daily lives. So Social Action for Climate Change program addresses that issue, where we are trying to see, let's say you're a journalist, and how you can play your role as a citizen. So this is what we are trying to do. So it's not just we are repeating the same in people, activists and the development sector experts to come and talk about it, but how we can create that community of active citizens in Sri Lanka who will speak for that, right? And in addition to that, we are also encouraging them to start with their grassroots engagement work, because that is very important, because all of us, now today we speak here after almost 15 years of work. I remember when we became a climate champions, we worked for almost 5 years on the ground on different projects. Then British Council recognized us as an international climate champion. Then we got into Rio Plus 20 and number of other engagements. So it's a long journey, right? But today, because of that, we can confidently talk about what is Paris Agreement, how corporates should be working on it, how we can also help them to, and consult them to help achieve these targets, right? So what we are also looking at, how we can create the next generation of advocates who will not just speak out of reading a book or somewhere they after sort of watching a video, but how we can start activism from the grassroots, but also strategically take them to the advocacy level as well, right? So that's why we are also incorporating the COP related discussions. COP is Conference of Parties. So we have been having number of COPs in 2015, just for the audience who are not really familiar with COP, that is a UN Climate Change Conference. So we had the one important COP in 2015 where the world leaders signed the Paris Agreement, where they agreed on number of things that they will follow, not in 5 years, 10 years, but in a longer run. There are certain factors like nationally determined contributions, right? A country should put forward. So all of these has to be sort of addressed, and people should make governments accountable to follow these agreements as well. But how can we do this if we only inform and bring awareness about this among the communities? So that's why we are having the last 2 days of the training is very much focused on advocacy, what is happening globally, how they can work with other active citizens across the world who has followed this training and learn from each other. And then not forgetting the SDGs, because that is also a very important milestone that we have by 2030, which the government has committed. Everyone is working together, but then in our grassroots level, friends should also know how they can contribute, how they can sort of, be part of it, beyond getting to those communication strategies and putting those colorful sort of SDGs all over the place, right? So we are basically getting to those details and trying to help them how they all can contribute to this national development in a very strategic and a longer term way.
So along with that, I think being innovative and ability to think differently is definitely a skill that you all are looking at this program. So how is the program designed to get the youth to think differently, Joanne?
Yes, Ashi, so looking at climate change, it is an issue that we haven't faced before. And the current development challenges also means that we have to look at addressing it in a different way. We can't do what we've been doing all this time, and they expect a different outcome,
Yeah.
right? So we have to look at innovative solutions. Now, as a part of the Active Citizens program, what we do is, like Husni correctly said, we look at systems, right? We look at what are the components within this system, who is the community, who are the people involved here, what are the levels of power, what are their levels of interaction with the environment, and then we look at all these little pieces, and then we think, okay, how can we work with these things? Everyone is a part of the community, everyone has an interaction with the environment at a higher level or at a lower level, but at the end of the day, we are all affected by it, right? So we have to look at, okay, how can I include every single member of the community? How can I include all their talents and capabilities and design a social action project that will address an issue? And the important part is address an issue that the community identifies as being important. That's the key aspect. That's where the success of the program lies, and that's where we really have the innovation coming in. So we have lots of activities that we really get the participants to think, okay, there is an issue, but how can I look at it in a different way? How can I really break down this issue to its roots, right? How do we, what we see on the surface, addressing that might not get to the solution. But we look at, okay, what is the cause of this? We keep asking why, and we get to the root cause of that. And that is where really, and that with so many other activities, where we really start to think, okay, how can we do something different and address this issue? And also that links to sustainability. Because if you get all members of the community involved, and if you're working on an issue that they all find important, if all their talents and resources are also put into use, then that's where the sustainability lies. Because the community will take it forward, the community will make sure that the end goal is achieved. And that's where the sustainability of the program lies. And when the sustainability of the program that any young person has designed through this program, when that is sustainable, it also means we're achieving environmental sustainability. We've addressed one, it might be a small piece of the puzzle, but we've addressed that at our own capacity and within our own community levels. So,
on that note, we would now like to take a short break. Welcome back to the program. Now, in continuing the interesting conversation we had about the climate change and the Active Citizens program of British Council, I would now like to ask, Husni, how do you really ensure that stakeholders are engaged in this whole process, and how do you build the movement along with them?
Great. So if you look at the Active Citizens training program itself, a lot of people think it's been directly implemented by British Council, but if you look at it, it's very much integrated to the community. So for example, this year it's been implemented in 6 different districts, and it's been implemented through local partners, right? So they know what sort of issue they have, and also they also identify their own trainees, participants, so that they will also be able to connect with the right people and also train them, and also in terms of sustainability they'll be able to continue to work with them over the years, right? In addition to that, it works in different ways. Number one, in terms of whom are we engaging with, so it's not just about the activist or community participants, but also state universities, for example. It's a great investment that we are seeing here right now, because they are also playing a huge role in the future as undergraduates, so that how we can engage with them, train them, be conscious about environment, so wherever they work after their graduation, they will have that consciousness wherever they go, right? Because in the future, doing business is all about doing good as well, right? So you can't just be financially focused, but also you have to always think about the social impact as well. So we are looking at, from one point of view in terms of the participants and the implementation, we are looking at that angle. In addition to that, when it comes to program implementation and the follow-up, we are always looking at the design thinking approach, like what Joe explained, and also when it comes to program implementation, we always try to see how we can engage multi-stakeholders, right? Because this again cannot be implemented implemented or achieved by a group of volunteers
Yeah.
or group of vocal people who might show them as sort of activists, but then it might be very tough for them to sort of achieve everything by themselves. But we are also having a system in a way that how they can work with local authorities, how they can work with other volunteer organizations, how they can work with the private sector, and how they can sort of lead that change through a multi-stakeholder approach as well. So that is something that it's unique about it, and also it's connected to the global community through British Council and its networks as well. Yeah.
All right. On that line, we have definitely come to the closing of the program. But before we wind up, I would like to take a message from both of you to the ones who are watching.
I think a message would be that let's look at fostering a culture of research and innovation so that we can achieve development, but also achieve that in a sustainable manner. And that is how we can solve these problems, like I said earlier, solve these issues in a new way, in a sustainable way, in a way that is better for the environment, but economically better for all of us as well.
All right. Do you have a message in brief, if you can take?
Yes. So I would say we all talk about sustainable development. We want to see a better world. But how can we do this? Because we have been talking about this for years and years and decades and decades. So my last message for everyone is about right now we have enough of leaders in our world, in our country, in our communities. But I think the need is we need to have conscious leaders, and they won't be there overnight again. So we have to work really hard to create a community of conscious leaders in the future. And this is one of those efforts that we are trying to do through trainings and engaging young people. So my advice or my reminder for all of you, if you want to see a system change, if you want to see a change in our world or in our country, let's start being conscious, and also let's promote conscious leadership at all levels. That includes in corporates, that includes in media institutions, that also includes in our own communities. So that is my message.
All right. Thank you so much, Joanne and Husni, for joining today's Biz 24 talk with Ada Dharana. So on that note, we are now ready to wind up today's session. We hope that you got some knowledge and insights from whatever we discussed today regarding the climate change and their Active Citizens program at British Council. We shall see you soon with another episode. Thank you so much for joining.